Can y'all hear me good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember as kids, we were always told that we could be anything we wanted when we grew up. There's some truth to that statement, but in actuality, it only applies to a select few. The majority of us have to become what our circumstances allow us to be. Being born and raised on the south side of Chicago, where drive-bys and peers being killed on school grounds was normal, I've always felt that my chances of becoming anything I wanted to be was a bit slim. I know that Chicago has always had its waves, but I grew up in a generation of senseless violence and drill rap, and that controlled most of the peer pressure that goes on. Luckily, I had my mom to help steer me to a positive path. She made sure that I never went on the block with the other kids and even transferred me to a private Catholic school so that I wouldn't have to deal with the regular public school issues. At the time, I hated it. And I didn't realize that she was trying to save my life. I had to find that out the hard way when I lost her and I was 12 years old. She passed away due to a heart attack. And coming from a true mama's boy, losing her was an undescribable depression. It knocked me off the path that she paved for me and sacrificed so much to do so. From that point on, my sister and I, we bounced around from different family members like grandparents, aunts, uncles, even close friends. We knew never to get comfortable wherever we moved to because we'd probably be leaving pretty soon. From grade 6 to 10th, I went to 9 different schools in 4 different states. Finally, my brother moved me here to Champaign to finish my last 2 years of high school. He ended up going back to Chicago towards the end of my senior year, so I had to hold down our apartment by myself. That summer, I met Savannah Donovan, who is an environmental specialist at the Anita Purves Nature Center. She gave me my first job in childcare, which turned out to be a beautiful field of work. I began thriving through the Urbana Park District, working at various locations and eventually having a chess club at the Urbana Middle School. Throughout the ups and downs that I went through those couple years, I can't say that I was actually happy because I was somewhere that felt like home. I took a morning of May 31st, 2020. I could vividly remember how frustrated I was due to the fact I was laid off after COVID hit. And then I viewed the video of George Floyd's death for the first time. And I remember that frustration quickly turning into anger, fear, and even grief for a man and his family that I didn't even know. So I decided to express my emotions on social media like a lot of 19-year-olds do. I did jump an extra mile and turned that expressing into a Black Lives Matter flyer for people to meet at Marketplace Mall and actually stand up for our rights and how we felt about this injustice situation. Honestly, that movement turned into a riot. When I got to the mall at 3 o'clock, the angle that I came on, there was no car in sight, not one person. I actually thought nobody had showed up, even though that the Facebook post had went viral in about 3 hours. There were race wars under the comments and people constantly texting me, asking if I was serious about showing up and things like that. By the time I came around the other side of the mall, I seen hundreds of people just out there, standing around in cars, sitting on top of them. Some had posters. There was a lot of screaming. I remember on the outskirts coming past that some people were yelling at me like, "Don't do this," and "You're about to ruin the community." And at that time, I didn't pay it any mind and kept surfacing through the crowd to where I got around more people who was pointing at me saying, it's him, it's the guy who made the post. And asking me like, are we serious? Are we really about to do this? And my first response was, yeah, let's do it. And before I could even develop the speech that was coming behind it, they were already bombarding the mall. After that, people started leaving the mall and marching down Prospect and Neal. And that's when realization kicked in that I really started a movement. And at the time, a lot of people would be looking at it as destruction, as violent. But at that moment, I looked at it as I was helping send a message that we as a people wouldn't stand for this type of injustice. When I got to my friend's house, I got back on Facebook and instantly seen my employee picture all over with a caption that read, Urbana Park District Employee Incites Riot. My brother seen me on the news actually, and he wasn't even in the state. He called and he said that he would come get me before things got worse. There was some type of state of emergency, so I literally had to leave in the trunk because officers were searching cars with a flashlight at the interstates. He took me to where my dad lives in Trugan, Mississippi, which happens to be one of the poorest towns in the country, so we thought it would be the perfect place to lay low. And you all wouldn't believe that I was arrested 4 days later. And in the beginning of this new journey, I went through something called diesel therapy. I'm not sure why, but I do know around that time, former President Trump had addressed the nation and labeled myself and many others who participated in Black Lives Matter movements domestic terrorists. And for those of you who don't know what diesel therapy is, it is a method by law enforcement personnel of getting rid of troublesome individuals. This method consists of randomly moving an inmate to new places across the country, new jails across the country, and keeping the individual from population and limiting their contact to the outside world. So just take some time and think about who you were at the age of 19. And imagine having to go through that shackled on a plane with some of the worst inmates in federal prison. When I made it back to Illinois, I felt a huge relief. I was hoping that I would receive bond and be able to fight this case at home. And I did. Except the next day, it was revoked by the district judge because they said that I was a threat to the community and also a flight risk. So I spent roughly a year, a bit more, fighting this case. My lawyer, Elizabeth Podluck, and I, the first thing we went for was dismissal due to freedom of speech. But there's something called the Anti-Rioting Act, and that is overbroad than our Constitution rights of freedom of speech. So that didn't work. And then we just decided that we would fight for probation. Since this is my first offense, I'm 19, and I made a Facebook post. Well, I ended up receiving 4 years in federal prison and a restitution order of $1.6 million for all the damages and things that were stolen during the riot. This $1.6 million gets paid by taking 50% of my disposable income a month. And until these speeches get a bit bigger, that's looking like a life sentence. Altogether, I ended up doing 3.5 years at FCI Hazleton in West Virginia, AKA Misery Mountain. If I thought my time in the county was a bit difficult, this was a whole different ballgame. I've probably seen more than 10 deaths. There's times that we went on lockdowns for 3 to 4 months because of race wars and whatever that could happen at any time. I remember calling my mentor, Savannah, and in the beginning, I'm like, you won't believe what just happened. We were just on lockdown for 2 months. Somebody got stabbed in the neck. Towards the end, I'm calling like, yeah, how you doing? We just got out of 4-month lockdown. My cellie died, but what's going on out there? Became a bit institutionalized. And then I met someone named Janice Jays, who happened to randomly set up a video call just to hear my side of the story. And that turned into her helping me create my own voice and publish articles like Donald Trump versus Shamar bets, which speaks on how I was labeled a domestic terrorist by former President Trump, and then 7 months later, he incited an insurrection at the Capitol building. But he's not going through nearly any of the consequences that I am, and he's 3 times my age. And between Janice and Savannah, and people like James Kilgore, who gave me hope that it was a community just like me waiting when I got out, they helped steer me back to that path that my mom paved a long time ago. Now let's fast forward 10 months later. I'm home now. Woo! I'm a published author. Woo! I'm an achievement coach for 4th and 5th grade at Dream. I'm a constituent services intern with the state representative, Carol Emmons. I received the Generation Next Award from the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Foundation. And tonight I also have this opportunity to share my story with you all. Now, even with how good that sounds, of course, I still have to worry with dealing with a 1.6 million restitution order. And as I said before, it takes 50% of my disposable income, which I found out that disposable dealing with the government is just the money after taxes. I knew it was money after spending, after you pay your bills and things like that. I also have to deal with being scared for my life every day.
Yeah.
When a police officer pulls me over and runs my name, what pops up in the system is maybe a member of a terrorist organization, armed and dangerous, violent tendencies. An officer's protocol is to ask me, is there any knives, guns, grenades, or rocket launchers in the car that they should know about? Which I feel like is definitely something to be scared over.
Yeah.
I feel like their demeanors when they approach me is different than how they normally would. And also I'm dealing with knowing that the recidivism rate is 37.1%. That means that nearly 40% of people who are released return to prison within their first year out. I say all this because I did get through one situation, but I am forced with a new situation at hand, and I have to stay consistent to the same mindset that I had coming home. Being able to slow down and listen to my mentors to take their advice before I make bigger decisions. I've also learned about networking. As people, we all struggle, and we all may be able to help another in a different way. You never know who has the solution to your problems, and I feel like as a whole, we can always support one another. When you develop a mindset like that, those quotes like, it takes a village and it's not always about what you know, they become more evident in your life. So to end it off today, I want to leave you all with a Huey P. Newton quote, which happens to be my favorite. and it's called I Am We. If you met an African man in ancient times and asked him who he was, his response would be, I am we. I, we, all of us are the one and the multitude. Thank you.
Yes, sir.